Breaking. King Charles just blocked Keir Starmer's direct orders in front of the entire cabinet. London erupted into absolute chaos within hours. And what the king did next could destroy 300 years of British parliamentary authority forever. This isn't protocol. This isn't tradition. This is a constitutional nuclear bomb that just detonated in the heart of Westminster. If you want to see how this ends, hit that subscribe button right now, because the next 72 hours will determine whether Britain still has a functioning government. Here's what sparked the most dangerous constitutional crisis since the English Civil War. Yesterday at 2:47 p.m, Prime Minister Keir Starmer issued Executive Order 2025A demanding immediate royal assent on his controversial migration reform bill. His message was brutally clear: sign it by midnight or face unprecedented consequences. The bill would give government ministers powers to override centuries of royal prerogative on immigration decisions. But King Charles wasn't about to roll over. The king did something no modern monarch has dared in 70 years. He said no, not a polite delay, not a request for clarification. A direct, unambiguous refusal delivered in writing to number 10 at exactly 4:23 p.m. yesterday. His exact words were chilling. According to leaked documents obtained by senior palace staff, Charles wrote, "The powers claimed in this legislation exceed constitutional boundaries. I cannot in good conscience grant royal assent to measures that fundamentally alter the balance between Crown and Parliament without proper constitutional review." The response was swift and devastating. Within 30 minutes, Starmer called an emergency cabinet meeting. Ministers described the atmosphere as electric with rage. The Prime Minister's face turned scarlet. His hand shook as he held the King's letter. "He's forgotten who runs this country," Starmer allegedly shouted, his voice echoing through the cabinet room. "We don't serve at his pleasure. He serves at ours." According to 3 separate ministerial sources, what happened next crossed every constitutional red line. Starmer picked up his phone and made a call that nobody in that room will ever forget. He phoned Buckingham Palace directly, bypassing all protocol, all procedures, all centuries of careful diplomatic language. One cabinet minister who witnessed the call described Starmer as unhinged, absolutely unhinged. The Prime Minister reportedly demanded to speak with Charles immediately, was refused by the private secretary, and then made threats that left seasoned politicians speechless. Meanwhile, British veterans who served their country for decades are struggling to access basic health care. James Patterson, a 71-year-old Falklands veteran from Portsmouth, waited 9 months for a critical heart operation. His GP told him there simply weren't enough resources. "I fought for this country," James said in a trembling voice, tears streaming down his weathered. "I nearly died for this flag, and now I can't even get the treatment I need to stay alive." His wife Margaret holds his hand every night, terrified she'll wake up to find him gone. While James waits and suffers, illegal migrants arriving on small boats receive immediate medical assessments, housing within days, and support services that British veterans can only dream about. We're talking full dental care, mental health support, translation services, legal representation, all funded by British taxpayers. The contrast is so brutal, so fundamentally unjust that even lifelong Labour voters are questioning their loyalty. British pensioners who paid into the system their entire working lives are choosing between heating and eating. Dorothy Williams, 73, from Newcastle, told ITV News she hasn't turned her heating on since October, despite temperatures dropping below freezing. "I worked 47 years as a nurse," she said, her hands shaking from cold. "Now I sit in 3 jumpers and a coat in my own home because I can't afford the gas bill." Meanwhile, government officials enjoy subsidised canteens, expense accounts that would make your head spin, and pension schemes worth millions. This isn't politics anymore. This is a betrayal of every value that made Britain great. Then something unprecedented happened that nobody saw coming. King Charles broke 70 years of royal protocol with a move so bold it sent shockwaves through every level of British society. At yesterday's Privy Council meeting, traditionally a ceremonial rubber stamp affair, the King delivered what insiders are calling the most powerful royal intervention since 1936. Standing before senior ministers, the Lord President, and constitutional advisers, Charles spoke for nearly 7 minutes. His voice never rose, his composure never cracked. But every word landed like a hammer blow. "The office I hold exists to protect constitutional stability," the king declared with quiet intensity that made several ministers visibly uncomfortable. "When that stability is threatened by hasty legislation that rewrites centuries of careful balance, I am duty-bound to raise concerns. This is not politics. This is constitutional preservation." Palace insiders reveal that Charles had prepared for this moment for months. Secret meetings with constitutional lawyers, private consultations with former prime ministers from both parties, detailed analysis of every similar crisis in Commonwealth history. The king wasn't acting on impulse, he was executing a carefully planned constitutional defence. The optics are absolutely devastating for Starmer. A prime minister trying to bully the monarch looks like a dictator in training. A king calmly defending constitutional tradition looks like exactly what the crown is supposed to be, a guardian of stability. But here's what makes this even more explosive. According to senior palace sources speaking on condition of anonymity, Charles consulted with his mother's former advisers before making his decision. These are the same constitutional experts who guided Queen Elizabeth through 70 years without a single major crisis. Their advice was unanimous and unambiguous. If Starmer's bill passes unchecked, it sets a precedent that future governments could exploit to dismantle every constitutional safeguard Britain has. One former advisor put it bluntly, "This isn't about immigration. This is about whether we're still a constitutional monarchy or whether we're sliding toward elected dictatorship." The financial markets reacted instantly with savage brutality. Within 90 minutes of the king's refusal becoming public, £4.7 billion was wiped from the FTSE 100. The pound dropped 2.3% against the dollar, its steepest single-day fall since the trust disaster. International investors panicked. If Britain's constitutional framework was collapsing, what other guarantees could they trust? Currency traders in Singapore, New York, and Frankfurt all said the same thing. Constitutional chaos equals economic disaster. Goldman Sachs released an emergency briefing warning clients about unprecedented political risk in a traditionally stable market. Morgan Stanley downgraded British government bonds for the first time in 15 years. The Bank of England held crisis meetings throughout the night. Governor Andrew Bailey allegedly told senior staff that if this constitutional standoff continues for another week, they may need to intervene to prevent a full-scale currency crisis. Inside the Labour Party, fractures became earthquakes. Deputy leader Angela Rayner allegedly stormed out of a strategy meeting shouting that Starmer had lost his mind. Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy refused to defend the Prime Minister on television, claiming a scheduling conflict despite being photographed at Westminster that same hour. Veteran Labour MP Barry Gardiner broke ranks spectacularly on BBC Question Time. If we're picking fights with King Charles over Sempley, constitutional technicalities, while pensioners freeze and the NHS collapses, we've forgotten why people elected us. Social media exploded into absolute chaos. Hashtag Defend the King trended globally for 11 straight hours, accumulating 8.2 million mentions. Protests erupted simultaneously across London, Manchester, Birmingham and Edinburgh. Thousands of Britons, most over 60, poured into the streets carrying Union Jacks and portraits of the King. These weren't professional protesters. These were ordinary citizens terrified that their country was being torn apart. One viral video shows an 82-year-old woman in Leeds standing alone in the rain, holding a sign reading, "My father died defending this country. Don't let them destroy it now." That clip has been viewed over 15 million times. Inside number 10 Downing Street, the atmosphere resembles a war bunker under siege. Ministers are openly shouting at each other in corridors. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, was reportedly overheard telling an aide that Starmer's ego has destroyed any chance of economic stability. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper held what she described as a routine security briefing that lasted 4 hours and included 17 backbench MPs. Nobody briefs backbenchers about security for 4 hours unless you're building a leadership challenge. WhatsApp groups with names like Constitutional Crisis Response and Emergency Party Leadership are buzzing with messages every few seconds. One leaked screenshot shows a message from a senior minister. He's finished. The only question is whether we move now or wait for him to resign. Another minister allegedly wrote, "If we don't act fast, Reform UK will be in government by Christmas." Transport Secretary Louise High sent a particularly damaging message that was leaked to The Telegraph. "I didn't sign up to attack the monarchy. My constituents are furious. We either replace him or we lose our seats. The question isn't if they'll move against Starmer, it's when. And every hour that passes makes that timeline shorter." Starmer himself looked visibly shaken during yesterday's Prime Minister's questions. His trademark confidence vanished. He stammered through answers, avoided eye contact, and at one point appeared to lose his train of thought entirely. Conservative MPs smelled blood. Rishi Sunak, normally measured and diplomatic, delivered a devastating blow. The Prime Minister claims to defend democracy while attacking the very institution that has protected British democracy for 1,000 years. Perhaps he should spend less time threatening the king and more time serving the people. The House erupted in cheers. Even some Labour backbenchers remained conspicuously silent. But wait, because what happened after Prime Minister's questions reveals just how desperate Starmer has become. According to 3 eyewitnesses, Starmer summoned his closest advisers to a private meeting in his study. The conversation, partially overheard by security staff, focused on one explosive option, invoking emergency powers under the Civil Contingencies Act. This nuclear option would allow Starmer to bypass normal parliamentary procedure and essentially rule by decree for up to 30 days. One advisor allegedly warned him, "If you do this, you're not just fighting the king anymore. You're declaring war on democracy itself." But here's the layer that could bring down not just Starmer, but Labour's entire government. Leaked cabinet documents show the migration reform bill contained a secret clause that nobody outside the inner circle knew about. According to 3 separate whistleblowers, Clause 47B would have given the Home Secretary powers to bypass not just royal oversight, but parliamentary scrutiny entirely on immigration decisions. If these documents are real, and if they show what multiple sources claim, then Starmer wasn't just attacking the king. He was attempting a constitutional coup, disguised as immigration reform. Think about what that means. A Prime Minister trying to strip away checks and balances that have protected British democracy for centuries. A government claiming emergency powers with no oversight, no accountability, no limits. The optics of that would be absolutely devastating. This isn't about immigration policy anymore. This is about whether Britain remains a constitutional democracy or slides into something much darker. The Times called it the most dangerous government overreach since Cromwell. The Telegraph ran the headline, "Labour's secret power grab exposed." Even The Guardian, traditionally Labour-friendly, questioned whether progressive reform has crossed into authoritarian territory. Constitutional law professor Dame Helena Kennedy, herself a Labour peer, wrote a scathing piece calling Clause 47B a betrayal of everything our Constitution stands for. She warned that if such powers became law, we would no longer be living in a democracy, but rather a facade of one where elected officials can ignore every restraint our ancestors fought to establish. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage is having the political moment of his lifetime. While Starmer stumbles and Labour ministers plot against each other, Farage stands calm and confident before packed rallies across Britain. "They call me extreme," he told a crowd of 4,000 inches Birmingham yesterday, his voice carrying across the arena. "But I'm not the one attacking our king. I'm not the one trying to rewrite our constitution in secret. I'm just the one defending what makes Britain Britain." The crowd erupted in thunderous applause that lasted nearly 2 minutes. While Labour appears chaotic and unhinged, Reform UK looks disciplined, patriotic and ready to govern. The polls tell an absolutely stunning story. Latest YouGov numbers show Conservatives at 31%, Labour collapsed to 24%, and Reform UK surging to 27%. For the first time in British political history, Farage's party is within striking distance of actual power. In Red Wall, constituencies that Labour won in 2024, Reform is now leading by 6 to 9 points. In traditional Tory strongholds, it's a three-way dead heat. Farage isn't just winning protest votes anymore. He's winning people who genuinely believe he's the only leader who still believes in Britain. Conservative defections to reform accelerated dramatically. 5 Tory MPs have privately indicated they're considering crossing the floor. If even 3 make the jump, the balance of power shifts completely. Richard Tice, Reform's deputy leader, told Sky News that membership applications crashed their website 3 times yesterday from overwhelming demand. "We've processed more new members in 48 hours than we did in the entire previous year," he said with barely contained excitement. "The British people are sending a message. They've had enough of politicians who despise their own country." But here's where it gets really interesting. International leaders are weighing in, and their interventions are making everything exponentially worse for Starmer. Canadian Prime Minister spoke yesterday about the importance of constitutional monarchy in maintaining democratic stability, a comment clearly aimed at Britain's crisis. Australian opposition leader Peter Dutton went further, calling Starmer's confrontation with the King an embarrassment to the Commonwealth. But the most damaging intervention came from an unexpected source. Former US President Barack Obama, typically diplomatic about British politics, told reporters in Washington, "The genius of constitutional monarchy is that it provides a check on executive overreach. When you attack that system, you're not being progressive, you're being dangerous." That quote dominated British news for 6 straight hours. Even President Biden's press secretary was forced to comment, offering tepid support for democratic institutions and constitutional norms, which everyone understood as criticism of Starmer without naming him directly. The message was clear. Britain's closest allies are worried that Starmer has gone too far, that he's destabilising not just his own country, but the entire concept of constitutional monarchy that underpins democracies across the Commonwealth. The next 7 days are absolutely critical. Tuesday brings an emergency parliamentary session where Starmer must face a confidence vote. If 40 Labour MPs abstain or vote against him, which insiders say is increasingly possible, his government falls. Wednesday sees the King's annual speech to Parliament, which now takes on nuclear significance. Every word will be analysed for hidden meaning. Will Charles defend his decision publicly? Will he call for national unity, or will his silence speak volumes? Thursday marks the deadline for royal assent on 3 other major bills currently waiting. If Charles refuses those as well, Britain enters a full-blown constitutional crisis with no clear resolution. Friday brings local by-elections in 4 constituencies, all of which Labour won comfortably last year. Polls suggest Reform UK could win 3 of them, a result that would trigger absolute panic in Labour ranks. The question is no longer whether Starmer can salvage his relationship with the King. It's whether he can survive the week as Prime Minister. Britain is watching its government collapse in real time, its economy shudder under constitutional uncertainty, and its political landscape transform in ways nobody predicted. This crisis will be studied for decades as the moment when a Prime Minister forgot that in Britain, power comes with limits, tradition comes with respect, and the Crown exists precisely to stop people like him from going too far. At its epicentre stands Keir Starmer, who looks increasingly isolated, desperate, and completely out of his depth. Behind closed doors, even his closest allies admit he miscalculated catastrophically. One senior Labour figure told The Times he thought he could bully the King. Like he bullies backbenchers, he forgot that Charles has been preparing for this role for 70 years. Starmer's been Prime Minister for barely more than a year. It's not even close to a fair fight. So here's the question that matters. Did Starmer just destroy his entire career by picking this fight? Or did King Charles just prove that the monarchy still has teeth when Britain needs protecting? What do you think happens next? Does Starmer resign, or do Labour MPs force him out? Does Charles use even more constitutional powers, or does his silence win this war? And could Nigel Farage actually become the next Prime Minister of Great Britain? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this constitutional crisis shocked you as much as it shocked us, share it with everyone who needs to see what's really happening in Westminster right now. The mainstream media won't tell you about the leaked documents, the secret clauses, or the cabinet ministers plotting in WhatsApp groups. But we will, because while London erupts in chaos and politicians play games, somebody needs to tell the truth about how close Britain just came to losing everything that makes it Britain. Next video drops in 48 hours, and what we've uncovered about Starmer's next move will blow your mind. This story is far from over.